Today's topic is 3.2 in our unit Ecosystems and Population Change. So 3.2, we are looking at classifying and naming organisms. Okay, so taxonomy is the practice of classifying living things. So scientists have to be able to identify, classify, and name species, and this system of naming and classifying species is the same method that's used by ecologists all over the world. Similarly to like chemistry, naming chemicals is also similar. It's the same method that's used throughout the world. And so in order to share information and develop new knowledge together, scientists have to have these common methodologies and practices. So the first classification system was developed more than 2,000 years ago by Aristotle. And then as new species were found, scientists were able to observe characteristics with a greater degree of accuracy. And we now have our modern system that we use today. So taxonomy, so like I compared to the periodic table in chemistry, it's universal to all scientists to be able to identify, easily identify and communicate about species in an ecosystem. So there's estimated about like somewhere between 10 and 100 million different species of organisms in the world. And so that field of taxonomy is the practice of classifying organisms. So there's 3 domains that all organisms are classified into, are bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. And we'll go through this, but as we go through these, you will see how, for example, why a robin and a human are named differently. Different names are given to different organisms so that people are better able to communicate better. So this domain system is an evolutionary model of classification based on cell structure. And this system proposes that there was a common ancestor cell that gave rise to these 3 different cell types, and then each representing a domain. So like I said, the 3 domains, so the first one, archaea, also archaea bacteria. Second one is the bacteria or eubacteria, and then eukarya, which is also known as eukaryotes. Further then, the eukarya is then divided into 4 kingdoms: protists, fungi, animalia, and plantae. And then organisms are placed into the kingdoms depending on their cell type, their ability to make food, and the number of cells in their body. So example, a daisy, it's a plant, it's classified as part of the plantae kingdom. It's multicellular, it contains a nucleus, and it also contains chloroplast that allows it to carry out photosynthesis and make its own food, and the cells have a cell wall. All right, so here in this diagram, we can just see the 3 domain system of classification: archaea, the bacteria, eukaryotes, and then the kingdoms. Like we talked about before, the kingdoms are protista, fungi, plantae, and animalia. They are grouped in the domain eukarya. So in here we can see those different kingdoms. Okay, so in this diagram, like we talked about, the domains are subdivided into kingdoms. So protista, fungi, plantae, animalia. So in this example, we're looking at a red fox. So its kingdom would be animalia. And then it's further subdivided into phyla, then class, and then order, and then family, and then genus, and then species. And as we go into each subdivision, the groups become more and more similar in physical characteristics and genetic makeup. So for example, in this example, we have the red fox species. its genus is Vulpes, and its species name is also Vulpes. So we call this Vulpes vulpes. And within the genus, there could be different species. Just a quick question here. Why are fungi no longer classified in the same kingdom as plants? So it's because they lack chloroplasts and they are not photosynthetic. Usually they are decomposers. So while fungi do not move, they lack chloroplasts and are not photosynthetic. They use digestive enzymes to break down food sources into absorbable molecules. All right, so here we're just looking at an example, the classification for the bobcat, and its genus name is Lynx, and its species name is Rufus. All right, so going through here, getting more and more specific. So we start with domain. It is in the domain of eukarya. The other organisms that can be included in this domain are shown here. Then we get more specific. So its kingdom is now Animalia. And then on the right here, we can see other organisms that can still be included in that group. So such as earthworms and sharks and bees. So we have to keep going. And next is phylum. So the phylum now is Chordata. And we can see now which organisms are included here. The shark's still here, horse, frog, dog, and so on. So we get even more specific. Next is class. The class now is Mammalia. Now we can see which organisms belong here. So shark is no longer part of the Mammalia group. Keep going, we go to order, Carnivora, and we can see which organisms belong to that order. Next we get into family, Felidae. So cougar, lynx, housecat, and bobcat still belong in the same family. Then we get even more specific. So now we're in the genus. So genus is now lynx, and organisms that now belong in this group are lynx and bobcats. And then finally we get into the species is Rufus, which is for the bobcat. So when we're naming the bobcat, we use the genus name first and then the species name. So Lynx rufus. All right, and that's the binomial nomenclature I'm talking about, where we use the two-part scientific name, which is the genus first, and then the species name. So when forming an organism scientific name, the genus is the first word, capitalize the first letter, and then the species name is the second word, and we lowercase the first letter, and then it becomes a two-part name. So for example, humans are Homo sapiens. So Homo is our genus name, and then sapiens is the species name. All right, so in the following table, so we're going to look at the table next here, but what you're going to notice in this table is that humans and the American robin are in the same domain, kingdom, are in the same domain, kingdom and phylum, but are in different classes. So what we're going to look at here is human and the American robin. So when we look at the domain, eukarya, eukarya for both, kingdom, Animalia, Animalia for both, phylum, Chordata, and Chordata, and then it changes when we get to class. Humans are part of the Mammalia class, and robins are part of the aves class. All right, so again, it's just specifying again that the scientific name, again, is made up of two names. It is written in italics, so genus is capitalized, and then species is all lowercase. The common name is neither capitalized nor written in italics. So for example, mountain lion, that's a common name. Caribou is a common name. American robin, that's a common name. All right, so as you go down as we go down this classification, the organisms become more and more closely related if they still are belonging to the same group. So for example, when I was talking about the humans and the robins, they're in the same domain, kingdom, and phylum. So domain, kingdom, and phylum, but then they are not in the same class. Zoom. All right, so let's look at our first question here. The broadest categories in the classification levels are A, kingdom and phylum, B, family and genus, C, genus and species, or D, domain and kingdom. The answer is domain and kingdom. That's the broadest category at the very top. So when we were looking at, for example, here, the domain and kingdom are the broadest categories. Question 2, the scientific name of a species is made up of family and genus, genus and domain, kingdom and phylum, or genus and species. So like we talked about before, whenever we give a scientific name for a species, it's the genus name and then the species name. And last, question 3, what is the benefit for scientists to use binomial nomenclature rather than common names? And reason being is, just like in chemistry, these scientific names are universal, whereas a common name may be confusing and not the same in different regions. So for example, a panther, a puma, and mountain lion all refer to the same species. The species name, scientific name, is Puma concolor. All right, question 4. So again, ignore the answer. We'll go through the question first. So we have a chart here going domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, and then we have our scientific name. So according to the table, humans are most closely related to the, and then we have to come up with our answer. So human is here, and we're just going to go through and see which organism we are most closely related to. Is it the thimble jellyfish, the ring-tailed lemur, or the American robin? So if we go through domain, we all 4 organisms belong to Eukarya. Go to kingdom, all 4 belong to Animalia. Go to our phylum, just 3. Humans are Chordata. Ring-tailed lemur is Chordata, and so is the American robin. So the jellyfish is out. Next, we have Mammalia and Mammalia. We already knew that thimble jellyfish was out, but American robin is now Aves. So we are most closely related to a ring-tailed lemur in this example. All right, next are dichotomous keys. These are it's a method of distinguishing between different organisms. So for example here, Parks Canada employees must be able to distinguish between different organisms based on observations. So for example, wildflowers are not to be picked in the parks. However, parks personnel can sometimes be seen pulling flowers in ditches. So they are trained to be able to identify the native species from the invasive species. So the native lance leaf aster and its invasive look-alike, the ox-eye daisy, are shown in these 2 diagrams here. All right, so this is the invasive species, which they are allowed to pick, and then this one here, the lance leaf aster, is the native species. All right, so how do we use dichotomous keys? So they're arranged in steps, and then there's 2 statements at each step. And there's a series of questions, and it leads to the identification of a species. And the questions in a dichotomous key refer to observable characteristics that can be used to identify an organism at the genus species level. So let's see here. So let's take a look at this example here. this is a portion of a dichotomous key to mites and ticks of North America. So you would go to the first question, is the body color red? Then you'd go to question 2. The body color is not red, you'd go to question 3. So looking at our diagram here, the body color is red, so we would go to question number 2. So question number 2, there's A and B. Body without hair. The body is globular, somewhat elongated. Therefore, it will be the red freshwater mite. And then the genus and species name is given. The second part is 2B. Does the body have dense velvety hair? Is the body oval to rounded, rectangle? Then it would be the velvet mite. All right, if the body color was not red, we would have gone to question number 3. There would have been 2 questions for 3, and you would just continue until you get to your answer. All right, so in this case, there doesn't seem to be any hair, so I would say body without hair. Body is globular and somewhat elongated, so this would be the red freshwater mite, and this is its name, Limnocaris americana. Okay, so there is a link here to practice using a dichotomous key, and it's online. So you would use these links here to go to these 2 sites and practice using a dichotomous key.